Okay, Chief Vandergraaf, we are live, so you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Chief Paul Vandergraaf of the Cobourg Police Service, and thank you for joining us virtually today for this news conference. The Cobourg Police Service respectfully acknowledge that we are located in the traditional and treaty territory of Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. The Cobourg Police Service respectfully acknowledge that the Williams Treaties First Nations have been stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and that today remain vigilant over the health and integrity for generations to come. We are all treaty people. I am here to address recent events over the weekend involving a large gathering and the tickets issued by the Cobourg Police for violations of the current stay-at-home order. Last week, the Government of Ontario declared a provincial emergency and stay-at-home order under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act that requires everyone to stay home unless it is essential. Exceptions include people to leave for essential work, medical appointments, grocery shopping, and the like. The stay-at-home order is expected to last at least until May 6th, if not longer. It is very clear in the title, stay at home unless it is essential. We have engaged with the community throughout this pandemic, enacting out our 4 E's: engaging, educating, explaining, leaving enforcement as a last resort. We have been clear that we are to the point that if people do not comply, they will be charged accordingly. We have been in this situation before. The expectations have been made clear with this particular community group in the past. This group continues to gather despite our efforts, so we have moved to enforcement. This weekend, we saw between 25 and 30 individuals gather again in front of Victoria Hall. Our officers engaged with the group, explaining once again that they were in contravention of the order and asked them to move along. They were asked to disperse and given ample time to do that, and advised if they didn't, they would be charged under the Emergency Management and Civil Protections Act. Many that day on Saturday made the conscious decision to not comply with police requests, and as such, 7 tickets were issued for failure to comply with an order made during a declared emergency contrary to the section 7.0.11 of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. Additionally, 2 individuals were issued provincial summonses for the offense of obstruct any person exercising a power in accordance with that order made during the declared emergency. We are still currently looking to identify 3 people that would not identify themselves. It is anticipated that these people will be charged at some point this week. I expect that these charges will be processed through the courts with the appropriate vigor. Cobourg Police Service members, town bylaw, demonstrated their professionalism by remaining calm throughout the interaction, as evidenced on video on the news site Today's Northumberland. Even while having misogynistic, sexist, racist, and derogatory slurs being hurled their way from individuals within the group, our officers rose above that disrespect. As expected, they did their job with exceptional courage and constraint. The disrespect that was shown to the officers last Saturday demonstrates that this protest is no longer peaceful and it is bordering on criminal activity. This is unacceptable in any circumstance. This behavior was unprovoked, all while children were present during this inconceivable occurrence. As chief, I could not be more proud of the officers, the special constable, and the bylaw enforcement that were present on Saturday. Many members of the community have recognized our actions as they deserve to be recognized, and for that, we are very grateful. To be clear, I'm not here to debate the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I'm also not here to debate anyone's personal opinions on COVID-19, current health measures, vaccines, or the province's response. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. Violating the stay-at-home order puts the health of our community and the capacity of our health care system at risk. As chief, I remain committed to working with our community and local partners to continue to promote compliance. We encourage everyone to take the necessary precautions to protect themselves and others. If not essential, please stay at home. While most people and local businesses are following provincial regulations and public health guidelines, the Cobourg Police will continue to respond to concerns about large gatherings and businesses not following the guidelines. Officers will continue to engage our community members through regular patrols, and we will respond to those calls as they come in. Again, we will always begin with educate, explain, before we move to enforce. We are working daily closely with the Haliburton-Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit and the municipality, specifically the Cobourg Town bylaw. I want to thank those citizens who are doing their part and expect full cooperation as we work together to keep our community healthy and safe, and by extension, the province and the country. We urge everyone to take the necessary precautions to protect themselves and others, and if it's not essential, please stay home. I would like to now pass it over to the Chair of the Cobourg Police Services Board, Mr. Dean Pepper.
Thank you, Chief, and thanks to the participants and the media to attend today. I'm sure most of you have now seen the videos in the protest in front of Victoria Hall from this past weekend. Despite the police being treated with total disrespect, the Cobourg Police Service members conducted themselves in a professional manner while executing their duties. The members did an exemplary job under incredibly difficult circumstances. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank all those members who were down there Saturday and did their job with distinction and with great reserve. The board will continue to support the Chief and the Cobourg Police Service members as they work day in and day out promoting compliance of the COVID restrictions in a quickly evolving situation. Our members, along with first responders, healthcare workers, and essential workers, are putting their lives on the line every day, showing up for work and keep us safe and healthy. With the record cases in Ontario, we must continue to stay vigilant and do our part in fighting this pandemic. I will now turn it over to Mayor John Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Pepper. At this point, I'd like to make clear that yes, people ask me, do I sit on the Cobourg Police Services Board? The answer to that is yes. Along with member Councillor Aaron Burkett, we serve as members of the Cobourg Police Services Board. Today, however, I'm greeting you as Mayor, Town of Cobourg, representing Town Council, and again, senior staff. There are three messages I'd like to deliver clearly. My first message is that I'd like the Cobourg Police Services, the bylaw enforcement team, and all associate groups to know they have our full support from the Mayor's office and from the Town of Cobourg. We know we're working collectively for the past 14 to 16 months on a COVID-related environment to ensure we liaison and are collaborative with local public health units, municipal and regional offices, and we continue to do this with the new appointment as well, with Dr. Natalie Bocking, who started her appointment April 6 as our Chief Medical Officer of Health. Point number two, I'd also like to commend all agencies, the Cobourg Police Service, bylaw officers, and again, accessory units, who have consistently, over the last 14 months, engaged various groups, including this group. They've indicated a form of education to try to explain the degree of compliance, why we require compliance under the Provincial EMCPA Act. Again, I wish to applaud because it's been a very consistent message. Please don't think for a moment this has just started to take place. Let me repeat, we have been doing this for a 14-month period. The last message I'd like to deliver probably is one of the most important. We're at a point that we have to deliver the message of keeping our community safe. As we know, we're now into the third wave. It's something we weren't hoping to have, but we're in the third wave. And I can tell you, if we were into a color code system, unfortunately, the HKPR district, including the Town of Cobourg and Northumberland, Peterborough South, in fact, would be moving from our past yellow to red. We all know what red means in terms of community and safety and well-being to our community. So again, I wish to reiterate, the stay-at-home order is clear. I concur with the chief. I'm not here to debate your personal preferences, what your attitude is towards the provincial order, what your personal information regarding what you believe your civil rights to be. We have a much greater mission, and that is to protect the community at large. So again, we do abide and are asking everyone, and I wish to applaud the citizens of Cobourg and Northumberland who continue to follow these measures, whether it be in business, individual residents, through community groups, and again, for the exceptional volunteerism that's been shown recently at our CCC vaccination center to ensure that everyone gets that vaccine in a reasonable manner. I will end on these three important components, and I hope it expresses why we support the Cobourg Police Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. We'll now open for questions. If you could indicate with your hand up if you have a question, and I'll call on you to ask. Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Mark from Global News.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm just wondering if the chief can answer, is there a hope that this is going to create a deterrent for future lockdown protests with how the reaction was over the weekend?
Thank you, Mark. Obviously, working through our 4 E's, we're always working on deterrence. We're hoping for that. I've been at this job for over 30 years. My belief is that we will we'll be back at this next Saturday. I truly hope and ask that we don't have a repeat performance, and we do have people obey by the stay-at-home order. We are staffing and planning accordingly as if it were to reoccur, but I would hope this would be enough of a deterrent.
For a quick follow-up, just wondering if police will prevent protests, or is there a way that they can protest where it's okay by police?
Yeah, so thank you, Mark. Yeah, the right to protest is inalienable in who we are as Canadian citizens, and we live in a country where this is allowed. The issue becomes when that right supersedes or becomes more important than a stay-at-home order. The government has instituted a stay-at-home order. It is essential. So we have to look at our forms of protest in a different way, and I encourage the voices to be heard, just not in contravention of the stay-at-home order.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any hands. Does anyone else have questions?
Lisa, there's a question in the text from Valerie.
Oh, my apologies, Valerie. So from Valerie, thank you, Chief. Oh, you see that there.
Sorry, yeah. Valerie, under the EMPCA, the fines range from $750 to $1,000 before the victim surcharge is added. In occasions, we move from a ticket, if you will, to what I refer to as a summons. The summons offense could be more because that matter is a non-set fine that goes before the courts at a scheduled court date.
Valerie, did you have a follow-up? Okay, no follow-up. And we'll move to Rob Washburn from Consider This.
Thank you. We've seen in the past that the police service has laid charges before, and we saw that the courts dismissed some of those charges, and in other cases handed out minor penalties. What is going on between the police and the courts in this case? What is the expectation of the police service, and what can people expect? Are we going to see just more slaps on the wrist and dismissals, or has there been conversations to indicate some sort of cooperation?
Thank you, Rob, for the question. The matter of laying a charge where a charge is reasonable and probable, we did that on Saturday. So we felt that the offenses were committed. We had reasonable grounds to charge the people, and we did that. Now the matter moves into the courts, And it's within the court's jurisdiction for them to decide a lesser penalty based on circumstances, to group multiple charges into a plea agreement, and that is outside of the preview of the police. We do have a meeting scheduled with the provincial prosecutors as well as the provincial crown attorney, just to be determined hopefully tomorrow, if not Wednesday. My intent is I'll be very loud and clear that I expect that these charges be processed through the courts with incredible vigor. We anticipate sharing the video as evidence, and I would expect that the court would take everything into its perspective and make the appropriate findings.
Follow-up, Rob?
Thank you very much. What is different? The mayor made a reference to this has been going on for 14 months, and you've been doing this education approach in your 3 E's. But what has changed that this time round is different? Why wasn't there charges at the same level during the last, the second wave when the stay-at-home order was existing? What flipped for you guys that made it so important now to lay the charges and not just continue on? Was it public outcry? Was there something else that was a factor that turned it around in this case?
Yeah, those decisions rest squarely with the Office of the Chief of Police, Rob. So as I said at a previous press announcement, the decision to move to this area of charges was purely mine to make, with consultation of my senior staff. Obviously, I consult with the board. This is because there's complete lack of compliance, lack of willingness to show any willingness to comply or willing to modify the form of protest. Conversations with these groups in advance, telling them we need you to look at this, and at the end of the day, it's a health situation. The numbers continue to rise. On the Thursday, I guess last Thursday, 38 more Ontarians died. So as chief, you have to make a decision. The decision rests with me that we were going to move differently this weekend. And again, we started off last Saturday with giving everybody the opportunity to leave without being charged. They made the conscious decision not to obey the officer's request and obey the order, and therefore the charges were laid. And we will continue on that path. We will give everybody the opportunity to comply. Only then, when they choose consciously not to comply, will charges be laid.
Thank you.
Pete Fisher from Today's Northumberland, go ahead.
Thanks, Lisa. If I can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Just wondering, Chief, is this disappointing to you to see this constantly? Like you've said, you've reiterated that it's been happening, but the previous lockdown, there were no charges, but now it is. And again, to reiterate what Rob has said, and I have a follow-up, but I mean, going forward, these are, if I can say, tickets. They aren't criminal charges at this point.
These are provincial offenses. That's correct. Under the Provincial Offences Act of the Emergency Measures Act. Yep.
So with Port Hope having one, and it has to be brought up, the Port Hope also had protest, I guess, in front of MPP Pacini's office, and officers didn't do anything at that point. Any comment on that? I do have a follow-up if that's okay.
Yeah. I can't speak to what occurred in Port Hope as I wasn't present. We have a very good relationships with the Port Hope Police Service and the Ontario Provincial Police Northumberland County OPP. I converse with the leaders regularly. Their decision not to lay charges, I did not want to speculate on. To me, the language in the stay-at-home order is very clear, and that was the direction I provided to our officers.
Thank you. And a follow-up to Mayor Henderson. Mayor, as you stated, this has been going on for 14 months. And the last lockdown, I reached out to you as they were protesting in front of Victoria Hall, as they have been every week. There was no comment then, and there's been no comment from you during these past 14 months about this. Why wasn't there, and why is there now?
Okay, thank you, Peter, for your questions. First of all, we indicated as part of our emergency control group that we meet on behalf of the town of which Chief Vandergraaf plays a large role, that any enforcement issues with any particular groups would be under the auspices or the direction of the Cobourg Police Services, and they would work in liaison with the bylaw officers. So the direction is it would be under the Cobourg Police Services Board and the chief. For that purpose, I did not make any statements. I'm not here to trump the chief. I'm here to work with the chief and the Cobourg Police Services Board. And in that light, if you remember in the beginning, we were having some degree of successes because our region happened to float between green, which is the lowest level in a color coordinated to a provincial model, and just most recently we're in yellow. But over that time, with everyone's best consistent collaborative effort, as you know, we have moved to a higher level. I just indicated today, if we were in a color code, our area, I believe, would be in red. The numbers have escalated, and the number of calls that I've received of mayor have also escalated from within our community. And these are not calls in favor of those who wish to demonstrate or show their civil rights. In fact, it's very much the opposite. So as we have our weekly and daily meetings, this information is shared with the chief. He can take that in the midst of all the other information he's gathering. And as a result, he can make a decision based on time, based on the situation, how he would like to proceed. And as he indicated very clearly today, I can't speak for the chief, but he indicated it is time, after a significant amount of time of engaging, educating, making pleas for a reasonable movement forward. And as you can see, that was all, I won't say respectfully declined, but it was certainly declined. And therefore the chief in his role acted accordingly to enforce the EMCPA. And again, it's only the chief who can enact the provincial summons. Let's be clear, a mayor, a town clerk, a council cannot enact that portion. So it's the message of working together at the appropriate time.
Sure. And if I can, and forgive me, Lisa, this will be the last one, forgive me. I'm just wondering though, like, not as an enforcement role, but just as a commentary as mayor, you haven't spoken about it now, just on your thoughts about it, not actually enforcement. I'm just saying about these people, these protesters there. And again, there's been at least one previous lockdown where they've been there. And again, I'm not speaking for enforcement, but I'm just saying these people are on your front doorstep as mayor, and we haven't heard from you.
Well, that's fine, Peter, but I wish to say I do respect under the Charter of Rights that everybody has the rights to protest however they see fit in every manner. It's a civil rights that is governed not only Ontario, but Canada. But at the same time, my position is very much the same as the Cobourg Police Services Board, the chief, and the council. And that is the situation certainly changes when you get a provincial EMCPA, which overrules and overdominates the act at this time. In other words, you can't have it both ways. You can't have an act at a provincial level that asks you clearly, all citizens, that's all citizens, to stay home except for essential reasons. This is not an essential reason under the act. You have ways you can express your personal opinion by writing to your MP, in this case, your MPP. You can ask to speak as a delegation. There are many other avenues that you can still get the message out if you believe the province is not on the right course, at the same time abide by the provincial actions. I want to be clear, I support the provincial actions. I support the collaborative effort between the Cobourg Police Services Board, the town of Cobourg, the emergency working groups, the residents in the town of Cobourg who are complying, the many volunteers, and that's not also to name probably the 15 or 20 plus organizations we have, such as Northumberland Hills Hospital, the Northumberland Family Health Teams, the HKPR Board of Health, and the list goes on. Again, Peter, the message I want to deliver, we're in this together with the goal of ending, hopefully at some point, the COVID-related environment for everyone's benefit.
Lisa, I'm just going to pile on a couple of themes here. I just want to grab and just make sure everybody is clear on. as we went through this lockdown and with the protest, and you're right, both Rob and Pete, to say that we had a previous stay-at-home order and we didn't lay charges. That decision rests squarely on my shoulders. It's not one of council, and it's not one of the board. The board sits as a role of governance, and I sit in the operations. And we make those decisions based on a lot of factors. And to Rob's point, sometimes community input does come in, and I speak to people all the time. Every weekend I get calls pro and con, obviously. And I can tell you that these decisions as we approached this weekend were not made easily, nor were the ones not to lay charges previously not made easily. And I accept the criticisms from maybe some people's view that we weren't quick and swift to move, but I feel that patience and diligence is the better part of valor in these things.
Thank you. We have another question from Rob Washburn. Go ahead.
Thank you. The chief alluded to this, and I'd like both the chief and the mayor to answer this. Chief, you said you anticipate maybe they're coming out again. How do you avoid the fact that, or not the fact, how do you avoid these people becoming martyrs to their cause by arresting them and giving them tickets? We saw last summer that there were some media outlets, national media outlets, that came down and tried to provide some coverage of the protests and of people trespassing on the beach. How do you stop this from escalating and becoming something where, you know, you bring a knife, they bring a gun, then you have to bring a bigger gun, et cetera, et cetera? How do you stop the escalation of this to becoming something more than what it is already? And I'd like the mayor to answer this as well.
Rob, thanks again. Yeah, thanks for the question. Just piece it apart here. Our job is to look at an event or an incident, and our officers do this at the drop of a hat in milliseconds sometimes, and make a decision as to whether they believe an offense is committed and take appropriate action. Maybe it's by a warning, maybe it's by charge. I can't worry, nor can I make decisions based on whether someone is using us to further a cause. And we will address each situation as it appears to us. Our officers' safety is always the first and foremost in my mind. So we will prepare for an event that we hope never occurs. That means we planned well. Should charges chose to be laid, they'll be laid. What happens once our officers lay the charge and goes before the courts, that's really out of our hands. And that's the thing about our justice system, is that there is always a second set of eyes, being a justice of the peace or a judge who will review these matters. At the end of the day, people make choices, and with choices are consequences. And I can't live in the world of what if this, what if that. I will look at the situation and we'll handle it accordingly.
Rob, thank you for your questions. I'm very much of a similar mind of the chief, and that is everyone at some point has to make a determination of what their response will be. I'm not in control of the response, but the individual is. What I appreciate from the Cobourg Police Services at all times, again, let me repeat, they were educated, they were engaged, they were given options that could have met with a win-win for everybody. For whatever reason, individuals chose not to elect or select that particular option. And as a result, the chief and the services had to follow through on what their role is within our community. I also appreciate when I viewed the video myself, they did so in a very calm, respectful, professional manner. I only wish to say, I wish the people receiving this reciprocate it in the same way. If you watch the video, nothing could be furthest from the truth. But again, I stated every individual has to control their own actions and reactions. So based on that, again, we realize once this is done, it will go before the courts. It's the courts who will make the determination. We are hopeful and remain hopeful, I want to say this, that there will be compliance. I think it's a reasonable request under the state that we're in, and that's the EMCPA. This is province-wide. Certainly, it affects every municipality in Ontario, and we're just asking for cooperation. I don't think that's a lot to ask in such circumstances. In terms of martyr, I would not credit them with that title. To me, the martyrs are our frontline officers, our healthcare workers, those working in service and supplies and service and goods to keep systems open, our public health teams, our doctors, bus drivers. The list could go on. If you're asking me who the martyrs are, there are martyrs. If you ask me, the volunteers who've made a diligent decision to step up and help somebody else in need. I believe we have now over 550 volunteers, as reported to me this past week in Cobourg. Personally, I'd like to congratulate those 550 people. I would say they're martyrs because they're going beyond, they're stepping up beyond their own personal self. So again, I think we have a different definition of martyr.
Well, with all due respect, though, Your Worship, what we're talking about is giving oxygen to a group, and by I use the term martyr, so I'm clear to you that their cause is their cause, and there are people who believe in their cause, and when you charge them and you ticket them, they go back and reflect to their group that we are the oppressed. They become the victims. And we've seen similar things play out. We saw this last summer when those who trespassed on the beach portrayed themselves as being hard done by the local police and by the local system. So I guess my question is, it's not to say that there are people who are, that they're doing something outstanding. I'm just simply asking, how are you politically going to stem this tide so that our town doesn't become a circus where those who oppose what's going on suddenly become energized by the actions of our local police and by our politicians? That was my question.
So I'll jump in here. I hear what you're saying, Rob. Obviously, these are concerns that we consider, but the alternative is just not possible. The alternative to bury our head in the sand is also not acceptable. So this is the crossroads where we're at. Again, we will continue to mediate. We'll continue to speak, engage, converse, communicate, do all of those things. But at the end of the day, the choice to comply with the provincial stay-at-home order rests with every one of us. The police are left with managing poor decisions at times, I guess. That'd be my final comment on that.
Thank you. Pete, from today's North Evelyn, go ahead.
I always have to figure out how to unmute it, Lisa. Paul, if you could talk a little bit about, as I was down there, officers had to respond to a weapons call that wasn't in the downtown area. If you can, and if this is true, like, is this taking away from other areas? Like, because of this, like, you have to deploy a number of officers down to this. I take it it's that just in case in brackets. But I mean, is this taking away from other areas? And here's a case where I believe the weapons call turned out to be nothing, but it's just that what if scenario.
Yeah, thank you, Pete, for the question. Yeah, the weapons call never turns out to be nothing. The minute we get a call about a weapons call, it's something for us. If we can unfound it, we're happy for that. Particular day shift on Saturday, our team responded to 24 calls of service in total, including those couple that we created for the event in front of Victoria Hall. We had brought in extra staff, so we had planned for this accordingly, and we brought in one confirmed sergeant and 2 constables in to provide an added support. The platoon was above complement, therefore at times you saw more officers than were on the schedule, if you were on a regular day shift. We also had our special constable tiered policing model into play, so the special constables were down there. We work with town bylaw every day, so town bylaw was present. So we had a very, very good complement of officers and civilian members to respond. No call was delayed in responding. We also had two or three people arrested for various warrant types of offenses, which required the other on-duty sergeant to come to the station to manage the effective prisoner care and control. Again, with great special constable assistance at the station. Nobody in Cobourg was without the support of the police. Had we had an all-out emergency, we would have pulled everybody off of that protest and moved to the higher priority call. Our members in Port Hope were also notified that we had this event ongoing and could provide assistance should we be required. Obviously, that goes to a great team that I have here at the Cobourg Police Service, who are incident command trained, and we plan. And I can tell you already this morning at 9 o'clock, we had our first planning meeting, moving to debrief this weekend and move forward for the next.
Thank you, Chief. I don't see any other questions, so we're going to hold here. If there's anything further, please reach out to myself, and I'd be happy to help anything after this. Thank you.